It is Thanksgiving 2025. Let's talk about how to make it as fun and interesting as possible. The three topics today are going to be making small talk interesting, the 5 C's of good storytelling, and active listening in order to make other people more interesting. Welcome back to Neuroconversant Leadership, where we talk about effective leadership and communication, especially in the STEM fields. I'm Jeremy Doran, and most weeks I love talking about how I can help great scientists and engineers become great leaders. This week, it's all about the holidays. Last Thanksgiving, I talked about how to deal with the stress of the holidays. I did that because the season from Thanksgiving to New Year can be challenging for many people. Expectations are so high, but there are a number of extra challenges when large groups get together, especially groups that don't often get together, so it's new. Maybe you don't know quite how to deal with that relative that you rarely see, you feel uncomfortable with the house filled with people, and maybe you strongly disagree with your cousin that you don't normally choose to spend time with, but you are because it's the holidays. But this year, I'm going to flip it. This isn't about how to survive Thanksgiving or any other holiday gathering. It's about how to make them awesome. Hopefully, this can make the holidays not only extra fun for you, but it'll make everyone around you happy and leave them thinking, oh, wow, insert your name here, made this so much fun. So you should probably dress nicely or at least interestingly, bring a fantastic food dish. That's a good start. But today, we're talking about small talk, storytelling, and active listening. If you're a fan of the show, you may notice that these topics come up pretty regularly. They're very important in business settings, but they're also super useful in larger gatherings of family or friends. Small talk. I personally find typical small talk abhorrent. It seems like such a trite waste of time. But who says that it has to be typical? Here's one formula that you can try. Make a statement about yourself and then ask an unexpectedly specific question. The 2 most common small talk topics are weather and health. So why not combine them in some way? How about this? It has finally gotten cold enough that my fall allergies have stopped. Yay! I guess that makes up for the shorter days. By the way, did you get to see the sunrise this morning? So what I did there is I shared a bit of personal information about myself, my allergies. I mentioned the shorter days, which goes to the weather. And then I asked a specific question. Did you see that sunrise? It gives them so much to work with. If you just say, oh boy, it's cold out, they don't really have a lot to work with on that. But with that one, they can talk about their health and or allergies. They can talk about how the shorter days affect them. They can talk about the fact that they may love or hate to wake up early. Any one of those 3 topics will easily lead to deeper conversations. Last year at this time, I talked about making big talk instead of small talk. And this is an easy way to initiate big talk. The second topic is storytelling. Again, something that I talk about often and the guests talk about often. Have some stories ready. Assume that there will be awkward pauses and be prepared to make them more comfortable for everyone. I recommend having 3 stories at the ready. They should be of different topics and of different lengths. And that way, no matter what the topic of conversation is, if you have 3 stories, you can usually frame one of them in a way that fits the conversation. Have you ever watched politicians answer questions about policy? They rarely answer the actual question, but they've got 3 talking points that they want to get to, and they are masters at framing their talking point in a way that flows from the question that was asked. And you can do something similar with your story. What are some things that make a good story? I like the 5 C's. Context, character, conflict, climax, and closure. So the context is to let people know where you were and when this story took place. If it isn't made clear right up front, they're going to have to stop and ask you a question, or they're going to be wondering, and that's going to throw the whole story off. So let them know when this happened, where you were, and that way the people will be ready to actually listen and pay attention. Talk about the characters. Who was there? If someone else was there that they know, that's great. If it's someone they don't know, just give a quick explanation of a character trait of theirs that's important to the plot of this story. such as, Joan is the friendliest person I know to humans, but boy, she does not like dogs. That tells you enough about Joan that it's probably going to allow people to understand who she is and how she affects the story. Conflict. If there's no challenge to overcome, the story's probably not going to be as riveting as you want it to be. If you asked someone for a glass of water and they give it to you, wah, that's not a great story. If you ask them for a glass of water and they say, only if you give me 10 push-ups, whoa. Now that's not a life or death type of conflict, but all of a sudden it makes people stand up and say, whew, I wonder what you did at that point. Some sort of conflict moves a story forward. And then climax. How did you resolve the conflict? What did you do and what was the result? Did you do the push-ups or did you say, forget it, I'm leaving? And then closure. Closure is really about what did you learn or what's the point of the story? Why did you tell it? Almost what was the moral? If the moral is, it turns out that having an exercise partner who pushes me has really helped me enjoy getting into shape, that closes the story out. If you want to learn more about storytelling, there are a few episodes. Number 42 with Trent Thoreau. He explains the 1-minute story. It's a good one. Episode 12 with Paul Smith. He talks about the overall storytelling structure. And in episode 47, I talk about the science behind why storytelling is so effective. So check those out. Have a few stories at the ready. And when there's silence or things are floundering, pull one of those stories out, get the conversation going again, make everybody happy. The third one's active listening. When someone states something about themselves, what they did, what they believe, etc., try to get to the why. Getting to the why does two things. It makes the conversation far more interesting. If someone says they ran 10 miles that morning and your response is, oh, wow, congratulations, that's nice, but it doesn't go anywhere. Why did they run 10 miles that morning? Are they preparing for a race? Do they have some sort of goal in mind? Was it a challenge? Why did it happen? The other thing that getting to the why does is it helps avoid arguments, believe it or not. If one of the things they said is something you don't agree with, maybe it's a political commentary or some other thing that you completely disagree with, rather than responding to what you disagree with, ask them why they believe it. It allows them to tell you something important about themselves. There's some reason why they find this topic important enough to have picked a stance. Try to understand what it is. It's also going to help you understand their point of view, and perhaps you may not ultimately end up agreeing with them, but you will at least get to understand how they could feel that way. When you can do that, it helps avoid arguments and disagreements. So how do you do it? How do you get to the why? Ask questions and make them as open-ended as possible. A few of my favorite questions are, tell me more about that. Great. You didn't direct them in any particular way. You're just asking for more. If you want to direct them a little bit, say, why is that important to you? But my favorites are, oh, really? Or just silence. Those two don't direct anything. It just shows that you're interested, and it gives them space to talk more about whatever the most important thing to them is about that particular topic. It allows them to pick what the topic is, which informs a lot, and then it gives you details about that topic. So show interest, ask questions, ask them as open-ended as possible. In episode 28, I talk more about slowing your brain down in order to be a better active listener. So there you have it. This has been a guide to not only surviving the holidays, but to make them extra fun and engaging. The 3 topics were small talk and storytelling and active listening. So there you have it. A guide to not only surviving the holidays, but to make them extra fun and engaging for yourself and for everyone around you. And on that note, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.